Alright guys, welcome back to F1 News. The off-season is officially over. Testing in Bahrain begins in just a couple of days' time. It will be Mercedes' final test with Lewis Hamilton behind the wheel, with his shock departure to Ferrari happening at the end of the season. Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez, though, have given their thoughts on the move. Max especially believes that the situation behind the scenes at Mercedes will get increasingly awkward as the season progresses. Very much intrigued your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Yesterday we saw this statement coming out of Formula 1 where they basically say nothing but they say that they're noting the internal investigation. Well, okay, it's an independent investigation into internal allegations at Red Bull involving Christian Horner. Today, we got a follow-up statement, actually, from the FIA. So that was from Formula 1. This is from the FIA, the governing body of the sport. In relation to the independent investigation currently undertaken by Red Bull GmbH, the FIA reiterates that until such time as the investigation is concluded and the outcome is known, we will not be commenting further. The FIA remains committed to upholding the highest standards of integrity, fairness and inclusivity within the sport. So I'm not saying they're putting more pressure on Red Bull than Formula 1 are, because Ford, if you saw that statement the other day that said that, you know, we hold our partners to a very high standard and all this, they're putting the pressure on, and, you know, it seems to me they're making a statement for statement's sake. There was a bit of drama though about this, because the FIA went from saying this morning, integrity, fairness and inclusivity, to then announcing just a couple of hours later they're partnering with AlphaTauri as their official clothing partner from this year until 2026. Now, this shouldn't be an absolutely massive shock, just because AlphaTauri have been the official apparel supplier of Formula 1 for now a couple of years. But, you know, that might be one deal, but to do a deal with the governing body, of course, that's meant to be impartial and uphold, what do they just say? Integrity, fairness and inclusivity, whatever you want to say. Now we've got this deal with Mohammed bin Sulayem shaking hands with, you know, this fella here from AlphaTauri. Of course, AlphaTauri still exists. They're no longer named on the car, but obviously an enterprise still owned by Red Bull, and now they're partnering with the governing body. Now, I know that people have probably overreacted to this somewhat, just because the FIA partners with Mercedes and Aston Martin in terms of supplying the safety cars, so maybe it's not too different, but I know people would say that, well, you know, someone's got to supply the safety car, whereas you don't necessarily need an official clothing partner. So it was definitely causing a bit of controversy, right? Because there's all this talk over the last couple of years of FIA Bull, or, you know, whatever people say, that relationship. And there's been certain stewarding decisions that have been made that you think, okay, are we sure that these decisions are entirely impartial? And now the FIA, like, officially partner with a Red Bull owned brand. Like, I really think that it shouldn't be possible, really, for the governing body to partner with anything, realistically speaking, that has a good connection to one of the teams. Maybe it's the same with the safety car, right, the other way around. But I still think it's interesting nonetheless. Next thing you know, they'll be partnering with Visa and Cash App, right, as their, like, official payments partner, and, you know, they'll be partnering with Red Bull Racing as their official catering partner. I don't know, like, you know, all sorts of possibilities and jokes were resulting from this, but still a bit of a... I didn't expect that today, let's be straight up. Now, on the whole Red Bull topic of Christian Horner, we did see Lewis Hamilton potentially trying to find a way to get Horner fired. And that comes down to the fact that he posted this yesterday. So look, I'm not going to comment any more on this image. That needs to be done. But there's like a meme or a curse that really has been going around over what is perceived to be Lewis Hamilton's thirst traps. Whenever he puts a picture like this on social media, the theory goes that shortly afterwards, something big happens in the sport. Now, I don't know whether you guys think this is pure coincidence, which it more than likely is, or whether Hamilton knows something we don't, or whether there literally is a curse involved. But if you guys haven't heard of this before, I'll just walk you through it. So, over the last couple of years, really, whenever Hamilton, most of the time that Hamilton posts an image like that on his social media, something pretty big happens in terms of someone leaving or losing their job or whatever over the coming days. So these are some examples. Pretty much began, you know, this is from 2022 actually, so quite a while ago now really this is all kicking off. But these were some examples just from that year, and it's actually continued since then. So he posts this image, then Vettel basically retires from the sport. He posts this one, a few days later, Ricciardo leaves McLaren. He posts this one, Latifi's out the same day. So, okay, you can look at a couple of days apart, but still, I mean, he posts this one, and then Mick Schumacher was gone, Binotto was fired, and there's plenty of other examples of this. This is end of 2022, but there's more examples of this over the last 12 months as well. So what people are saying is, okay, Hamilton's posted another one of these images. Here we go, right? It's time for somebody to lose their job. But of course, there is one man in a lot of hot water at the moment, and we are probably expecting some sort of resolution this week. But of course, it doesn't necessarily seem like that's going to be happening, because rumours has it, as of today, that Horner will be in Bahrain for the pre-season testing. So, as I've said a while ago now, I definitely think Horner will go down fighting on this, and whatever you want to say on the matter, innocent until proven guilty and all that, he is not going to be stepping away of his own accord, and he will be there apparently tomorrow for the tests in Bahrain starting Wednesday. There has been some further speculation though on a possible Horner successor, because the general feeling is around the paddock that Horner will not survive this, of course, in his role. So there's been thoughts as to, well, who's coming in next. Now, Jonathan Wheatley was the main man thrown around because, you know, that's an internal solution. There was an interesting rumour a little while ago that actually if the Austrian part of Red Bull do get rid of Horner, they want to put one of their own, like, executive guys in, which would be very interesting from, like, a team culture perspective. There's also been David Coulthard mentioned, which I thought was probably a bit of an out-of-the-blue option. Oliver Oakes, high-tech Grand Prix, but also Mattia Binotto and Otmar Shafsnai, right? I mean, look, unfortunately, they don't mention Good to Steiner. Could you imagine the timeline if Good was to return to Red Bull to take Horner's job? But that all seems rather unlikely. But the other major story, of course, of the last couple of weeks is Lewis Hamilton joining Ferrari. It's kind of funny to note that it seemed like loads of people in the motorsport world knew about this before Mercedes and Toto Wolff knew about this. Now, Toto, I think, did say when Lewis came to, basically tell him over lunch or whatever it was that he was going to be leaving for Ferrari, he'd said he had heard rumours over the previous days of this possibility. But apparently Piero Ferrari, having done the deal, was even mentioning it in the MotoGP paddock to Fabio Quartararo, right? So, he actually said, Quartararo, that I was visiting Maranello a couple of days before the announcement, and Piero Ferrari suggested to me that it was happening, but he said that he didn't even really recognise what he meant until it was thereafter confirmed. There's also been talk from Ferrari that they are intensifying work on their 2026 power unit. The general feeling is right now that Ferrari and Mercedes are ahead of the game in terms of preparation for 2026. Of course, 2024 is still a focus point. 2025, however, will be massively put to the back burner in favour of the 2026 regulations. And just because it's such a massive change to aero, but also to the power unit side, you've got to nail both. And the last time there were major changes to both elements, that was 2014. We know what Hamilton managed to achieve that year, and of course beyond. So he made the right decision back then. The question is, has he seen something at Ferrari that makes him feel like it's the right decision for 2026 and beyond as well? There's lots of optimism around Ferrari's power unit, and to be fair, there was lots of optimism around their team going into 2022. They delivered a little bit right for the start of that season, but that wasn't a power unit change. And of course, we know that Red Bull over the last 15 years, the only times they haven't competed for the championship really has been when their engine has been shoddy. Basically, every year Red Bull have put together a competitive aerodynamic package, but it's been at the Renault engines, for example, that weren't exactly particularly optimal. Now they're on Honda, they're absolutely fine. But of course, we do wonder whether that whole Red Bull-Ford relationship, because that's their engine partner for 2026, is going to be brought into question by the whole Horner stuff. And if Horner was to go, then what does that mean for the immediate term? Especially while Ferrari are talking a very big game. But of course, that is further down the line. Hamilton would join in 2025, going into that 2026 season, where realistically speaking, that is the opportunity, I think, for a bit of a reset to happen. Because, let's be honest, Max is probably going to dominate this season, as we have seen for the last couple of years. But Verstappen actually was commenting on the Hamilton move, because it's been a massive talking point since the start of the month. I think it was the 1st of February that this news was officially confirmed. But Verstappen knows, based on his own experience and other drivers' experience as well, that when you've decided to leave a team now, and, because theoretically, Hamilton could have drawn this out. It didn't necessarily have to be locked in now. There were rumours possibly that Hamilton had to decide whether he was going to use that clause in his contract to end it after just 1 year now, and he couldn't have dragged it on. But the rumour was that apparently that clause didn't really exist, and Hamilton and Ferrari just came to the decision to do this now, and then to let the world know before the season began. Theoretically, Hamilton could have allowed this to drag on, I believe, and then made the decision later. But I think for all parties, It's probably better. Of course, it allows Mercedes the opportunity to know what's going on, and they don't have to react very quickly as they did when Rosberg, remarkably retired after winning in 2016, right? He decided to call it a day, shockingly, of course, for the team. Then they had to make a very quick decision on what they were going to do for the upcoming season. So Hamilton's not forced that on Mercedes. They have the time to consider Antonelli, to consider Alonso. Those are rumoured to be the top two candidates. But it does mean that for Hamilton's size, Mercedes know that he's gone, and therefore internally that makes things rather interesting, not just in terms of what happens with Russell, which I think is one big part of the story here, really. How does Russell feel about this situation? Does he feel like he's already, therefore, the number one driver, the future of the team, based on this announcement? Therefore, he's going to expect maybe different treatment from the team than might otherwise be expected. Or is Hamilton really going to be motivated, as you'd probably expect, to win this year because it's his final year at Mercedes? I mean, he's obviously wants to win every year, but, if there's ever a year to do it, this would probably be the year to try and make that happen. So I think it kind of goes both ways. But also it's the behind-the-scenes stuff. What happens in the engineering meetings when Mercedes know, and have known for a few weeks now, that Hamilton will go to Ferrari? And it's not like, Hamilton will forget everything and have his memory wiped when he leaves Mercedes. Things that he learns during the course of the year may be beneficial to Ferrari for the upcoming season. Now, Toto Wolff did comment on this and say that, well, we trust Hamilton's integrity and all this type of stuff, but it's a natural thing that it becomes a bit awkward, right? So as Max says, the only thing for me was that it seemed to be strange that it was leaked now and they had to announce something big that early in the season. I think it's for sure going to make the rest of the season a little bit awkward. So I'm not really sure that it was leaked and therefore they had to announce it. I'm pretty sure they were planning to announce it early anyway, because we just saw Piero Ferrari literally tell Quartararo, of course, MotoGP rider, that the move was happening. So I think they knew that it was coming out. Unless they were really that bad at keeping secrets, I think they probably knew that, right, I can afford to tell this guy because it's going to get leaked to the press. It's going to come out in the media anyway over the next couple of days, and therefore it's going to be fine. Even though it did seem like Mercedes themselves were somewhat caught off guard, to be fair, by the leaks, because I think the media reached out to Mercedes and they said, we have no comment at this time or whatever, which pretty much confirms the story when that response was required. But of course, as Max goes on to say, even though you've had a lot of success together as a team, you can't be included into anything anymore. But him going to Ferrari is not really shocking. From my side, it's difficult to know. I don't know how the current situation is in Mercedes, what he has in the back of his mind, if it's a dream from when he was a kid. But at some point, if you've already achieved so much, why not? But maybe he's gone to Ferrari and they've shown him stuff that we don't know. So for me, it's very difficult to answer. And I believe that Helmut Marko said a similar thing, that it's very plausible that Ferrari have shown Hamilton something that really caught his attention that the other teams aren't aware of, but also might be somewhat concerned about if they really have something special that Fred Vasseur and the boys are cooking up there behind the scenes. So not shocked about going to Ferrari, but I think the timing from Verstappen's side is interesting and what that means behind the scenes at Mercedes. Verstappen went on to say for sure he has a great relationship with everyone and especially with Toto, but at some point Toto will tell him, I'm really sorry Lewis, we've had all this success, but you can't be part of these certain meetings anymore. That's normal in F1, probably a bit weird. You're professional enough to deal with it as a driver, but things would still get a little bit awkward as and when that's the case. It's not like they're suddenly enemies. He's achieved so much, but at some point you just can't share certain stuff. But once he's sitting in the car, they'll still go flat out for him to try and win races as well. So I imagine that's something that will more so come into play as the season progresses. For now, they will probably let Hamilton know what is going on, but as they get to a certain point in the season when the work is really towards 2025, Hamilton will start to be excluded from certain meetings, and he might not be so happy about that. I'm sure that he's going to understand it from that perspective that he's leaving to join Ferrari, but I think it would make things somewhat awkward internally, especially if Russell is in those meetings, he's having conversations with the team, Hamilton is excluded from those meetings. There's probably a feeling from Russell that, he should be forecast to be the number one man at that point. But then the on-track relationship might not be like that. So I think it's going to be a fascinating season, especially those internal dynamics at Mercedes, and everything good or bad that happens at Mercedes will be, maybe not changing Hamilton's mind, but it will be inspiring some thoughts in Hamilton based on the decision that he's made. Perez also gave some thoughts on this as well, though, and said the following: the dynamics are going to be interesting to watch from the outside. Having a driver that is moving teams, I'm guessing. We all know how jealous the teams are on sharing information, because Lewis has been there many years. I think he'll be taking a lot of knowledge to the other team, and potentially staff as well. That's the other point. We don't really have any updates on, Peter Bonington or Andrew Chauvelin or some of these other guys that were rumoured to be going along with Hamilton to Ferrari. Those are topics that I'm sure we'll have some more clear answers to over the coming months. But Hamilton will take a lot to Ferrari, even if it's not some other top staff. It's certainly some knowledge and ideas about Mercedes have operated and what they're planning for the future. So that'll be interesting dynamics to watch. So Toto says, don't worry about it. But both Perez and Max share the same feeling that there's either some jealousy from Mercedes to sharing information to Lewis that might get passed on, and some awkward internal dynamics. How does that translate to the track? Of course, that's another question entirely, and it does depend to some great degree on how competitive the car is. The last couple of years have been pretty feisty between Lewis and George, but we haven't seen anything absolutely absurd like we saw with Rosberg Hamilton, realistically, because they're not fighting for the championship. But if all of a sudden the W15 is a championship contender, then I'm expecting fireworks internally at Mercedes, and they will have some good idea of that after tomorrow. So, of course, testing is this weekend, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday this week really, and tomorrow is going to be the shakedown for Mercedes. So the car is there, they'll be doing their 200-kilometer shakedown in Bahrain tomorrow, and then coming Wednesday, then they'll of course be cracking on with everything from then. This is the plan for Red Bull as well. Verstappen, I think this is the same they did last year maybe. Verstappen will do the entirety of Wednesday, they'll then split it, Perez and Verstappen on Thursday, Perez will do Friday on his own, and these are the timings and the situations. So the season is officially back, effectively. We've had a long off-season, and the last couple of weeks have been a ridiculous off-season, to be honest, but Wednesday we're back in business. So these are the universal time, whatever it is, which I'm pretty sure just worked out to be UK time really. So 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. on all of the days. Of course, Friday's Drive to Survive as well. It's always fun, the testing, because the poor broadcasters, sometimes they don't really have much to talk about, so they're just waffling on for like hours on ends, and it's always quite entertaining for that really, more so than even the cars. But that's when we're going to get our real first picture as to what the potential competitive order is going to be for this season. So very much interested in your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Thanks for 39,000 subs as well. Yesterday we smashed through that barrier just last evening, so yeah, thanks so much for all the support. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then you probably might want to, because there's going to be a lot happening over the coming days here. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new as always, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.